It's ad break time. I am proud to announce that the Beyond Solitaire podcast is sponsored by Central Michigan University's Center for Learning Through Games and Simulations. On October 1st, they will be launching a new series called Art and System, which will be headed up by Tim Hutchings. The goal of the series is to showcase indie games and to push the boundaries of gaming. The first games to go to crowdfunding will be a revised edition of Liam Burke's Dog Eat Dog, Anna Anthropy's Princess with a Cursed Sword, and Timothy Kleinert's The Mountain Witch. This is a fantastic initiative that I am personally excited to support. Also, if you want to help me keep the lights on over here on the podcast, you can support me at patreon.com/beyondsolitaire. For now, though, let's get on with the show. Hey, gamers, this is Liz from Beyond Solitaire, and this week on the pod, I have a very special guest. We've got Efka Bladukas from No Pun Included, and I'm happy to see you on here again. Efka, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm here. It's the morning. I'm having a nice podcast interview. That's like where I want to be. So, I think that you and I are both in the same like wake up timeline right now, though. So it's perfect.
I mean, I've been awake for a while. I've walked the dog. I made myself breakfast. Got some shopping in. Fully awake now. Ready to podcast.
Yeah, we're gonna say all kinds of drama here. No, I'm kidding. I did want to have you on. We we had. I really enjoyed having you on for like a short interview in episode 200 because we kind of talked about your approach to making videos about board games. I thought it might be fun to like have a full hour. So I guess the obvious question is, what are you playing right now that we could expect videos about soon?
So I'm playing a lot of Dune Imperium lately because I'm working on
Ooh,
a pretty big video about Dune Imperium. So I can sort of drop the title of that video. For the first time, reveal the upcoming thing. It's Everybody is Wrong About Dune brackets Imperium. And it is gonna. I don't know if it's gonna rival the length of the Arcs video that we've just done, which was the longest thing we've ever made. I think it was an hour and 36 minutes. So I don't know if it's gonna be that long, but it's also really quite long. And one of the most fun parts about this project was that I had to travel to a different country to take some footage for this video. I had to read a number of books about not just Dune, but Frank Herbert. So I've got them here with me. This is one of the worst books I have ever read. This is called The Spice Must Flow, and it is a book about the writing of Dune. One of the most peculiar works of, like, I almost want to like it redefines the term fan fiction because it presents itself as authoritative fact, but it a lot of it feels fictional, and it's definitely a lot of fan service. This is The Road to Dune. This is by Frank Herbert, Brian Herbert, and Kevin J. Anderson, all of who wrote about Dune, and there's like various discarded bits about the creation of Dune, letters between editors and stuff like that. And you might be rightfully asking, why so much time spent reading about Dune when Dune Imperium is just kind of like a deck building game? Sure, it has the Dune theme and whatever. There are so many strange parallels between the sort of ludological journey of Dune Imperium and also Dune itself. And getting into those is going to be, I think, really interesting. So that's the next big project I'm working on, and I'm very excited about that.
yeah, that actually sounds awesome. And I also so your video on Arcs was probably the last leader video from you I'll be able to watch because I haven't worked on Arcs, so I can enjoy it without like feeling like it's my stuff. But you read a whole bunch of sci-fi for that as well. So you've been doing like these kind of like big reading projects for
Yes.
some videos. Is that something that you know in advance you're going to do, or is that something that like emerges as you think about the game, like it turns into something bigger?
Oh, that's a great question. So I think it's both, right? Sometimes I consciously pick up books that are adjacent to something that I'm working on, because they like align in the sort of um, stories that should emerge from a game, but also I try for them to be things that I am actually interested about, you know? So with Dune, I am really interested in Dune, not because I am interested in Dune, but the sort of narrative around Dune and how it emerged and how it developed and how it changed over time, what Dune means to people. Because unlike a lot of sci-fi that is popular as amongst the speculative fiction kind of circles, Dune is one of those pop culture franchises that transcends that. It's like Star Wars or you know, Star Trek or whatever. And so people have a very different mythological perspective of what that is. And so uh, with that, I had to very consciously, obviously read Dune, but also read books that were written about Dune, and that's kind of a more direct research based work. But with something like ARCs, again, I knew I had to do that because I had a strong suspicion that you know foundation is the foundation of that work, and I what was funny was that like I was like, I hope I'm right with this, and then when I finished the video, I thought I'll check back in on Oath, and I was like, oh, the expansion for Oath, the new expansion is called, what's it called? Oh, it's called New Foundations. Okay, okay. Um, Regretted not
Yeah.
putting that in the video, but I kind of noticed that too late.
Although, have we talked about the source material for Oath before together?
I'm not sure that we have.
So
No.
it's the Chronicles of Prydain.
Oh yes, no, you did
Um,
mention that to me.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
But actually, that source material ended up being really important for me because the Queen of Shadows co-op mode we made is based on like the Death Lord from those books because Ricky and I got really into like the lore and like tried to draw off of it. So before I start work on, I'm not breaking any promises, people. I'm looking at arcs, obviously, because I work there. But I'm gonna be reading Foundation and like Hyperion and stuff in the
Yeah,
next
those
months as
books
I
did
like
not
begin my
age
like.
well. They
What, you
they
don't
they
think
are
the Chronicles of Prydain?
no, sorry, the Foundation and also Hyperion. Like they
Yeah.
are not. They have they have some issues surrounding them, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend them, but like uh, but it was interesting to explore them as, oh god, this is not a pun, as foundational works, like
Yeah.
as something that clearly a lot of sci-fi has built on, and sometimes that kind of like is inescapable to have that in the background. So rereading Foundation was interesting, but when I was writing the arcs video, uh there were a lot of books I was just reading at the time that uh, I happily found like important parallels, and um, they complemented the work. So that whether that was like Aurora by Kim Stanley Robinson, which is I think one of the best sci-fi books written
Oh
in
yeah.
the last like 20-30 years or something like that. And it's remarkable how visionary it is in terms of and how like because we have this whole like tech bro narrative about like, oh, we're gonna expand into space and colonize everything, and then we're gonna leave earth behind, and how confidently that book just crushes that viewpoint. It's a sight to behold. But so but there were like parallels within that narrative that kind of I found interesting in relation to arcs, uh, but also like sometimes you just have to not read the books themselves, but stuff around the books. Like I put in a quote from Ursula K. Le Guin in her own introduction to Left Hand of Darkness,
Yeah.
I found incredibly pertinent to how one views arcs, and that sci-fi, people dismiss sci-fi because they think it's escapist, but what they actually don't like about it when pressed on it is that it makes them uncomfortable. And I think that's such a kind of a profound way of looking at it, because we're always thinking about like speculative fiction as something that's kind of just like a goofy fun time, but
Yeah.
actually most often its purpose is to probe you, in a way that makes you consider the unconsidered. And I think that's very appropriate for arcs, because it's a game that really wants you to sit with it and think about why you're doing the things that you're doing, and what kind of narrative you're actually creating out of play. So yeah.
No, that makes sense. I do want to have a side shout out for Aurora. So actually, I was talking to Cole like years ago now, and I mentioned that I had a hard time like getting into sci-fi, and I didn't really know how to appreciate it. Did he have a recommendation? And that is the book that he recommended. So I took him up on it, and like a couple days later, I was crying over a spaceship. So
Yeah.
Aurora, read it. If we get nothing else from this,
Yeah, it's such a great
so
book.
it's really good. It's just really, really good. So I love that you're doing projects like this. It makes me really happy. Uh, but you're a YouTuber. You have probably some sort of schedule to keep to.
Yes.
So, what does your balance look like between larger and smaller projects right now?
um it's always like, I think this is one of the trickiest things that I have to juggle right now, because we work from home, and we both, so we live together and we work together, and we work in the same place where we live, right? So me and Elaine definitely struggle with this, because as much as it would be lovely to just kind of launch yourself into these big projects that everyone responds to really well, and they always, well, not always, but most of the time they do really well. People are interested in these sorts of videos, and even if they don't do well, the people that are into them respond to them so positively that it always feels very validating to do them. But at the end of the day, being like a niche within a niche, you have to you have to kind of feed the algorithm, and it's a very cynical way of looking at it, and saying feed the algorithm kind of, it has a lot of connotations surrounding that makes it, like sound like, sometimes we have to put out slop, but it's really not the way we see it either. I found that I work best when I actually really passionately care about speaking about whatever subject that I'm choosing to speak about. And I have made videos in the past that I feel, kind of nothing about now. And I could feel when I was making them that somewhere along the way I made the wrong call. I made the wrong decision in what to cover. But now the gears are in motion and I can't stop. Right? Like, so I have to go through with it, and then I will do the best work that I can. But
Yeah.
I've noticed that, like, those are the videos that I usually forget, like, and then I go back and go, I made this. This is something I've made. This exists out there. People have watched this. I don't remember it. So if I don't remember it, you know, like, what value and worth is it to people? So I think the answer to that question is that I have to, I have to try and gauge, and I don't always succeed. Like, is this something I actually care about? Or is it just like a temporary flight of fancy that I am fascinated with for like a hot minute, and then I'll forget about it, right? And so So it's tricky, and I don't always get it right. So like right now, I'm really debating whether I want to cover Fate of the Fellowship because that's the new
Mm.
Lord of the Rings pandemic game, and I'm having a very good time with it. You know, but there, I don't know if it's just like my fascination with Tolkien and the game isn't actually that interesting, or is the game actually quite interesting and it's not just my fascination with Tolkien. So, I have to spend time kind of with the game and play the game before I even want to figure out whether I want to talk about it. And the answer is probably yes, I do, because I'm having a good time with that game. Uh, but I don't want to make the wrong call and cover something that I will regret spending so much time on, because every video we do make, even the smaller ones, they take every video I make, I forget how much time they take. Like, and then you spend like days filming and editing, and you go, wait, does this really take that this much time? I don't remember this taking this much time. And every time I was like, yes, it does, Efka. So yeah, I guess that it's a very long-winded answer, but I am trying my best to pick the right projects to cover, even when they are smaller projects. And I'm starting to feel like even even by our standards, like what we consider small is not actually small, uh, because all of them take a lot of work to do.
Yeah. It's interesting you say this because I feel like most people covering Fate of the Fellowship, including me, like when I was working harder to like be good about posting on YouTube, would probably just post something and not play it a bunch before even deciding whether to make a video for it. I think people just want to make the video for the most part. So is this an attitude that you've always had, or is this something that's kind of like developed over years of doing the channel and kind of figuring out who you want to be
Oh,
as a
definitely.
commentator?
It's definitely something that's developed. I used to be a lot more kind of freewheeling, and sometimes, I've gotten really good about not just um, you know, making videos because I feel like making a video. I used to be like, no, I just really want to make a video. And sometimes I would start with a basis that isn't strong enough. And that usually means like not scripting things enough, and kind of going, oh, this bit, whatever, I'll just improvise, and it's fine. And I think I found that when I have to improvise, I can do it. I think I can do it okay, but I don't feel as comfortable doing it, and it's not as much fun for me. I much rather have something structured that I can kind of build on, and then sometimes you even have like a finished script, and you'll be like, okay, this feels solid. I'm ready to film. And then you start filming and go, no, 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 no. This is wrong. This doesn't feel right. Go back. Uh, and so you go back and change the script and then go again. Um, but yeah, like I think I used to be a lot more like, yeah, let's just do it. This is gonna be fun. And as what we do sort of expanded, we plan out a lot more, we prepare a lot more, and so everything takes more time. And so you kind of want to be respectful of that time, of my own time, of Elaine's time, uh, and so I don't want to just be like, yeah, it'll be fine. I am trying to be a lot more rigorous and structured, and so that expands the scope. But then because it's like an Ouroboros, right? Like you're trying to be more respectful of your work, and because of that, the work becomes bigger, and because the work is bigger, you're trying to be more respectful of your work.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. So, okay, I'm very curious about what your scripts look like. I don't script anything because I'm a bum. Um, I just want to chat. But when you do a script, like how detailed are we talking? Are we talking like word for word? Are you a bullet point guy? And then like when you and Elaine are working on a project, how much of like, I mean, her cinematography is also like a major part of your channel. Are y'all
Uh-huh.
also like planning down to the shot?
So like for the arcs video, I think Elaine did over like something like definitely over 100. I want to say like 120 or something like that, but I might be wrong. I might be like making this number up. But I think she did about 120 shots of B-roll. Um, I know that she planned all of those out, right? Like I know that when she started filming, she had a structured plan of what every one of those shots was going to be. Because if you don't do that, what you end up doing is you end up doing a lot of setup and teardown for very similar
Mm-hmm.
shots, right? So you need to know which shots are like this is just a card. I'm showing a card. Which shots are like this is a top-down board, like and I'm panning. Or which shots are like, hey, this element needs to come in and this element needs to come out, and these are the things that are in the background. So it's very mechanical and it's very technical. So if you don't do that, if you don't plan everything out, and you just do things chronologically, you'll end up like doing the same angle, 20 different times because like um you know it's moving in the chronological pace, whereas if you group everything up and say these are the shots, then you know all the cards, you just set that angle up once and then you do all the cards and stuff like that, right? So I know that she plans everything out. I don't plan that out myself, even though like I'm the one who like we play the games together, we talk about them together, we decide what we want to say together and what's important. But I then go and write the script. And
Mm-hmm.
what I say in the video is usually about like the words themselves. The 98% is has been like written down. Um there's 2% wiggle room for like this doesn't work, I need to change this a little bit, or because when you write it, you even though when I write, I'll write 3 paragraphs and I'll be like, okay, now I'm gonna read these out loud in Efka voice, you know uh but then like, and that sounds fine and you think, oh yeah, this is good, but then you're actually filming and you're going, oh, this doesn't work, so I need to change something. So there is that, but yeah, the words I will write, almost verbatim to what they are in the video. But then I also need to plan out like scene structure in terms of like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, here I'm talking about something that happens like on a player's board, right? So I need to think about what angle I am gonna show that from. And so there's some planning there, but that kind of scene structure is a bit loose, and these scenes will like normally come just before we start filming. We will plan them out again because we don't shoot chronologically, but mostly that's kind of the slightly improv bit. And sometimes I will write to Elaine like a little note on the script saying this is what I want this specific part of B-roll to be, because I think it works if it's that and not something else. But most of the time I just leave that for her to plan out and structure, and so however she sees that, and then we use like the old tried and true clapperboard technology of her filming 120 different scenes that I then have to put together in Premiere Pro in some sort of a way that makes sense.
So this is very labor intensive, and I just respect this so much, especially compared to my own sort of slapdash work. Um, but this also, you talk about being like stuck thinking about the algorithm. So when you're putting this much into videos, what I guess happens if you have a flop? And what kind of like, we were talking about thumbnails and stuff before that. Like, what are all like the little things that are going into making sure that your work is like shown off in a way that gives it the best shot at life?
Well, the first thing that happens is that I have a little cry, you know, and feel a little
That's
bit
legit.
sorry for myself, right? But no, it just, it's the nature of the work that you can't dwell on it too much. You have to move on. You learn some lessons, like you go, well, no, doing that again, But I think the yeah, thumbnails definitely a big part of, like, you have to present the work in an appealing package, and I imagine publishers will probably relate to this because it's the same way with like board game covers. Like, you made this board game, you believe in this board game, but then there's this like entirely other thing that you have to do to make it actually sell, that feels like connected to your work but not necessarily representative of your work. Because sometimes I think that that's part of it, because when I make thumbnails, sometimes I deliberately don't want to put the thumbnail that I think will make the video very successful, because it feels a little bit icky and trite. Not icky as in like gross, but icky as in like, this is the easy way out and I don't want to do it. But like, you have to do it because you don't want your video to be in the YouTube graveyard. Um, but like, yeah, I don't know. You don't all. I often don't get it right. With thumbnails. I like, we just did the Old King's Crown video, and when the first like day was terrible. Like, that video was not doing well, and I knew it within the first 15 minutes of that video launching. Just by just by seeing what the numbers are, you can tell, like, oh, no one's watching this. So I had to quickly change the thumbnail and the title of the video, because the title was originally The Two Braveries of the Old King's Crown, which I think is a very poetic title that's representative of what the video is about. And now the title is the most exciting board game of 2025.
Oh
Like,
yeah, I know everybody immediately clicked that. Although I will say that the crown that you're wearing in the thumbnail is fantastic, and I want it.
thank you. I
So
love that crown. It's so good, isn't it? Like, it's
it's
it's really
beautiful.
just a cardboard crown. It looks really good. The person that made it knew what they were doing. I just got it off of Etsy. I was like, this looks this crown looks really good. I'm gonna buy it. And then it came, and I'm like, oh, it's cardboard. Okay. Um, but yeah, no, it looks good on camera.
For
Um,
real.
uh, it felt empowering wearing that. Like, I was like, yeah.
So I just went over YouTube and clicked on videos, and like the thing that's showing up first is you holding your nose, tossing tickets right into a trash can.
Yeah.
Um, did that feel like the easy way out, or did that feel like the hard way?
That felt like the fun way. That's just what I wanted to do. That was just for me.
Oh man. So, okay, here's a question then. To what degree do you allow your need, because I mean it is a need for your channel to continue to do well because it is your livelihood.
Yes.
Um for that aspect of your work to, for it to be successful in that way. Like, have you ever nixed a project that you wanted to do but you just didn't think it would do well, or like held yourself back from something because you were balancing between the commercial and like artistic aspects of this work?
I often nix projects because I find myself too bored with like, I find that sometimes I will try to cover something that people are very excited to hear about. And I was like, I think I should cover this because this will do numbers, right? And then I spend time with the game, and I find that I don't have an interesting story to tell, right? And that's kind of always been my barometer on what I should be covering and what I shouldn't, is like, forget about like the hype or whatever. Have have I got an interesting story here, right? And by that, I don't necessarily even mean that the video has to be positive or negative or whatever, right? Like, have I got
Yeah.
a good angle, right? Can I say something that hasn't been said, you know? So with the Old King's Crown, that was pretty easy because there was almost no coverage of this game. There were a few reviews of it that were of the finished product because
Right.
there were a bunch of, you know, like there was a bunch of coverage of it when it was on crowdfunding, but the
Yeah, I
game
mean, I
is,
previewed it.
yeah, the game is substantially different now, right? Like I know that they've done a lot of changes, so there wasn't that much with the finished product, and mostly because you know the game's not out yet. But I felt very strongly about it. I felt like this is gonna be this. I love I love this game. I think this game is absolutely great. I really
Yeah.
really like it, and I my angle was very simple. Like, hey, you know, I'm early. Um, I get to tell a lot of people about this game from a first time publisher, first time designer. So like it's not on the radar yet, you know, but I maybe can do that. Maybe I can be the person that kind of brings attention to it. So the angle was very simple here. You know, it's a very simple story. Just get excited about a game, which is easy because I love it, and you know, like just try and kind of relate that to people. So that's fun. But sometimes it's more complex than that, you know. Like and again with for example, Dune Imperium is a much beloved game. And the video that I'm working on, you know, like very consciously calling it Everybody's Wrong About Dune, brackets Imperium, is a very provocative title. Like but it is something that I actually genuinely mean, and I don't want to. You know, it sounds antagonistic, but I don't think I explore it in an antagonistic way at all. I just think we all missed a trick, and you know, I think that is an interesting story to me. You know, and I hope that people can relate to that. You know, so or you know, I did a video called "This Is Arousal," which I think is a very funny title. You
That
know,
was a great
which
title.
right like that's it tickled me um
Did it? Sorry.
with that with that, you know, that story emerged out of something else entirely because I was writing a video about like tutorials and rule books,
Yeah.
and um I through the process of that an entirely different story emerged, right? And I was like, this is a much more interesting story, so I'm gonna bin this stupid video that I don't feel about, you know, tutorials and rule books, and actually, you know, chase the more interesting story, which turned out to be the study about arousal in board games.
Too little of that,
It's,
from what I know.
it's not dirty. It's not that kind of arousal. It's sweat. It's talking about sweat.
Yes.
Yeah.
um. So I like the way that you talk about you're looking for a story in your videos. So I mean, I think that people could just see you as like an actor, a person who has videos. But do you maybe see yourself more as a writer sometimes?
Oh yeah.
Because it
What?
seems like
It's
the
like,
medium you're choosing is visual and audio,
yes.
but the process behind it is something else.
Oh, I'm 100% a writer. I have a creative writing degree. Like so, you know, I always saw myself as a writer since I was 17, I think. I instinctively from then on, like I tried it and something immediately clicked, and I knew my entire life from then on that all I want to do is write, really. Um the video part, I don't know where that came from. There was definitely a part of me that was fascinated with creation of video as an art form, as a process, and YouTube is the right platform for that because I'm not trained in it or anything like that. I'm just like a guy, you know, with a camera. Sorry, let me rephrase that. I'm just an idiot with a camera. Um, and like, you know, with YouTube, you can experiment. You can try things without knowing really what you're doing. Uh, and through the process of that, maybe learn something. So video was a fun journey for me, and it still continues to be. And I think when it gets really sloggy, I try to remind myself of that.
Hmm.
That yeah, it's not the thing that I'm most passionate about, but it is an adventure and a fun adventure. But like, if I could, now that I've built myself this silly platform, um, that's where I am. That's where I do things. Um, I don't know how Elaine feels about it. Like, I mean, to an extent, I do know she doesn't like being on camera at all, and that's why she's not on camera anymore because we can allow for that. But she loves doing B-roll. It's something that she finds very satisfying. So, um, we've kind of slotted perfectly because I don't like filming things that much. Um, but yeah, like I remind myself that this is a fun adventure, and it's fun to do. But if I could just write, I think I would just write. You know, I
Yeah.
don't particularly relish being on camera. I just I think the desire to tell an interesting story kind of supersedes that, and so I am on camera, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I did not know about the creative writing degree. That's super cool. I
Um,
I already knew you were a reader because the way you talk about books is like it makes it really obvious, but I didn't know you're that's really neat.
yeah, it was the second time in university. The first time I was doing an English degree, and I didn't finish it. Like I was doing English and translation, and very late in the process, I realized it's not something I'm actually passionate about or interested in. And what I actually want to do is writing. So I moved countries, and then got myself a creative writing degree, and it was fun. I enjoyed it. I did a master's as well that I also didn't finish because once again I realized this is not something I want to be doing. Um, and yeah, no, I really like writing. It's fun, and I think the most fun part of the job for me is after we've played the games as many times as we needed to sit down and kind of make a story out of that, to put everything together, to take all the experiences we had and contextualize them and put like a through line through it. Um, it's really rewarding and it's really fun because when you do finish and you do have like a script, it it feels like that journey that we went through playing these games is somehow reflected in that.
Yeah.
and and I know I've done well when Elaine says that as well because you know she's very good at editing me and picking up on things that work or don't work. But if she says, "Yeah, you've managed to somehow put on paper what we experienced," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, okay, I nailed it this time. That's cool."
That is really cool. So I initially decided like I just had to have a chat with you because you made a video about all games being political.
Mm.
And I do very much agree with you that games are all cultural objects. However, having dug up lots of potsherds in the desert, I can also tell you that not all cultural objects are that interesting. So when you think about, so for me, I think I gravitate towards covering historical games, and that's what I like the best because I feel like their story is the most obvious. Like you
Mhm.
can very quickly assess what is this person trying to cover. Do I think it was successful? And like, let me look at actual background information that I can verify because it's a history game to like give myself some grounding. How do you look for that kind of story in I guess games that don't have such obvious footing? And then even if they're all cultural objects, do you think that all games have stories?
I do. I think everything has a story, right? The question is, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, right? Is the question here intent, right? Like because when we ask like does this game have a story, do we mean did the author intend for the story to be there, or like do we mean like is there a story here at all?
Oh, I think definitely you can't include intent, partially because I think that authors lose control of their story or whatever they thought it was the moment it leaves them.
Well,
But
that's
also
one of
because
the
I think
parts,
that
right? The death of the author.
oh, absolutely. But I
Yeah.
also think that we're all unintentionally saying something, even if we think we're saying nothing.
Right. And that's kind of, that's my take on it, really. That like it doesn't matter really what the intended story was, but like, every everything has a story. The question is whether that story is interesting, you know? And most of the time it, with uh especially like fairly abstract games, like, okay, let me be less diplomatic. Thousands of board games come out every year. Most of them are not that interesting, right? Like, let's be honest. Like, most of them
Yes.
are fine, right? Or not even
Yes.
fine, just dull. Um, but 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 there are games, right, that are sometimes, I think, unintentionally interesting. Like where you look at it and go, "Well, this is nothing." But the more you start, like, you know, like that meme of like the two persons poking something, like in the center. Come on, do something,
Yeah.
like you kind of just poke at it like lackadaisically, and then suddenly go, wait, whoa, there's this is way more here than I expected, and that's often funny, I think. I think games have like almost unlimited scope to be unintentionally funny, um because sometimes, like, whoever made them, I think, maybe made them like very seriously, but the end result is very silly. And um and I think there's kind of a humor in that, right? And recognizing that humor and expounding upon it, sometimes in your own absurd way. I love exaggeration as a person. So I like to take something that's small and make it way bigger than it needs to be. And so if if I take like a very, like, you know, simple board game and overanalyze it to death, I think you can come out with something that is hilarious, and that is a kind of story, because if you can, you know, you can, I think, sometimes take a game that, maybe isn't that fun to play, but like analyze it in such a way that makes it kind of preposterous, and therefore brings more joy to people than it otherwise would. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It also makes me think, and this is actually a great question to ask of you. You're a writer, you're a reader, you're a gamer. One thing I think about is we like to talk about, oh, board games telling stories, narrative board games, like open world board, like we're trying to get board games to be a lot of things. And I wonder sometimes if my attachment to historical gaming is because I need a lift of some sort of external input to help me see the game and feel its story more. But I don't know if that's a me thing. Like, what do you think is the actual capacity for a board game to tell stories? And then how much sort of external reading and stuff? Like, do you need it to make it better for you? Or, what is a board game intrinsically able to do narratively?
Oh yeah, that's an easy question. Thank you for that. I will not have any difficulty answering this at all. Uh, so, uh, hmm, I think that when it comes to like external reading, which I know is something I do, but again, that's just because I like to read, right? Like, there are people who don't like reading that much, or don't like reading fiction that much, for example, right?
Yeah.
And so a person who mostly reads nonfiction is going to take away like very different context from a game than a person who reads mostly fiction like I do. Um, and and there's just no right or wrong here, right? I think games have like this sort of intrinsic capacity for storytelling because they approach things in very different ways. They are like inescapably already a story because most games try to simulate something, right? and then like through that act of simulation they try to, like, it's almost like creation. You're like evoking something, right? And so I think that therefore, like, every game has capacity to tell a story, but it needs to be conscious. And when I say it, I mean the designers. Um, it needs to be conscious of the frame that it is telling the story from.
Yeah.
This is all about framing, you know? Like, if you consider the strengths and weaknesses, you know, like this video I did where I talked about what a frame of a board game is, you know, like if you look at a picture, you know, of like a still from a movie, you know, you can see everything that is in a frame, you know, and that's the story. But as soon as you like hit unpause and the frame starts going, you know, all the like things don't just move in and out of frames, but there's also, you know, story happening by the things that you can't see in the frame. They're deliberately off screen, right? You know, and there's sound and everything, right? So, but you are limited, sort of, to what's in frame and what's not in frame, right? That's kind of your storytelling motif. A board game has much greater potential than a movie because it's not just like so your frame is first of all holistic because it encompasses everything that can be, right? Like it
Hmm.
almost like creates a world. If you look at a board, right, that's like the universe that this world inhabits, right? And then not only is that universe alive because you can like move pieces and stuff like that, but also it's it's like improvised input. You have sometimes one or sometimes multiple people who are like actively doing things without any directorial volition. You know, the designer of a board game can impose rules and say, well, this is how you must do things, but then the rest is for the players to interpret, right? So I think the scale for like potential storytelling is enormous, but I think we're just like discovering that still. I think board games in so many ways are so very old and simultaneously so very young because of their journey as cultural objects. You know, they have like games have always been a part of us, but it is only now that people have really started to very seriously explore this, right? So I think we still have a lot to discover and uncover, as it were. And the potential is definitely there.
I hope so. I'm looking forward to like more interesting work in board game criticism in coming years. Although I do think our cultural current is against it.
Well,
Um,
there is that, yeah.
our economic one too, possibly right now, but I don't want to dwell there.
Yep.
So on a more prosaic note then, so like when you talk about stories, like you mentioned earlier in our conversation that you don't really care if your feelings about a game are positive or negative as long as there's a story there and like that is what interests you as the impetus for a video.
Hmm.
Do you, I mean, to what extent do you think much about whether about I guess about negative reviews, what their place is? I feel like everybody always has this conversation. Um but you know, where are you at on it currently?
Hmm. So I've noticed this sort of like sentiment sometimes that I hear, including from some people I very much respect, where they'll say that they'll only do positive coverage because hey, they want to bring the joy of board games or whatever, you know. Or then there's obviously, you know, that sort of counter argument, not counter argument, but like a parallel argument that you see from a lot of audiences where they'll say things like, oh yeah, that person's just like negative for clicks or whatever. And that's been attributed to me as well. Um, because I think that's been attributed to anyone who's done any kind of negative review. Um, I, I tend to ignore that as noise because I think it's the job of a critic to not only assess games, Um, that's the primary function, definitely, but also to kind of give a sense to their audience that this is a serious person who takes their job seriously, right? And like, because if you don't relay that sense, then you are, and I mean, that's, it sounds very definitive. You can be as silly as you want to, but I think people need to get a sense that you put in effort and time into your work, right?
Yeah.
um because there needs to be a relationship of trust, right? And trust is such a rare and finicky commodity, because as soon as you can say, oh wow, you can trust me, the immediate response to that is no, 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 I can't, right? Like, so how do you kind of build that sense with your audience, because you need to as a critic. I think it's imperative, right? How do you build that sense as a critic with your audience where they can feel like they can trust you, not necessarily like as a definitive statement, but like there's a modicum of trust, right? And I think the only way you can do that is if you, what's the like normal way of putting this, um like lay yourself bare, right? As many times as you can, as often as you can, right? Like, that's how I see it, like, if I don't like something and I feel something about that, I feel like there is something here. There's something here that people can relate to. There's something here that is more than just, oh, I don't like this, I should tell that story. And if there's something here that's like, hey, this is really good, I'm really enjoying this, and it's more than just, oh yeah, I'm having a nice time, I should tell that story as well, right? So, I'm hoping that by doing that, we can, as no pun included, we can come across as people who will, not, they'll be as honest as we can, right? Because there's no such thing as ultimate honesty. I can't, I can't account for every bias that I have, or because everyone. I think my biggest sorry, I'm gonna sort of divert myself. My biggest pet peeve
I'll go for
is when I
it.
go on BGG and I see a review for a game, and it'll say something. Well, this is my unbiased opinion. No, it isn't. Like, everyone's got bias, I'm sorry, like, for everything, like, there's so many unconscious little things, right? I am biased all the time, but the thing that I can do is I can at least try to, and will inevitably fail, try to examine, like, what bias is there, where is it coming from, does it even really matter, you know like, and relay that, right? So, that's what I mean by honesty. I will try to be as raw and sincere as I can be in the work that I present, right? And I hope that through doing that repeatedly, I can build some sort of a sense from people that, like, what I say is, I thought about it. I've put in effort. I don't know. It's very hard to articulate for me, but I'm hoping that I'm getting something through.
Yeah, I think so. Um, Actually, it's funny. One of the questions I don't plan a ton of questions in advance, but one of the ones I'd kind of wondered about, but I think you've answered it through the course of this interview, is how do you maintain, I guess, your passion for what you are doing? And this is maybe just a me thing, but one of the reasons that, I mean, design has worked out differently for me. The more I worked with games, the more I want to. But
Mm.
with you doing my YouTube channel, I experienced and still do like very frequent burnout
Oh
because of sort of the pressure to keep playing, the need to film something, the sense of obligation, I guess, that comes with looking at a pile of games and being like, oh God, I gotta play this. Oh my God. And like, it's not that I don't like games, it's that I look at when it starts to feel like a chore, I start to get like agitated. How do you, I guess, manage that in your life? It sounds like part of it is through looking for the story, so you're at least keeping yourself pleased and entertained with the work you're putting out. But how else do you handle that burnout?
It's coming to that time of year now, which is November, where like the inevitable burnout kicks in. It's become seasonal for me, and I can always clock it. It's right after Essen, right? Like give it about like I come back from Essen, I'm really energized. There's all these cool games, right? And in about 2 weeks after that, it starts to really set in. And I don't know why. I don't know. Maybe it's also to do with seasonal, disorder, mood disorder, whatever it's called. Do you know what I mean?
Seasonal affective disorder. Yeah,
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah.
yeah, that one, right? Maybe it's that as well. Like a combined kind of thing, with the post Essen blues. But like last year, I couldn't put out videos for 2 months after Essen. Like it was really bad. It was very, very bad. So it's coming up to that time now. But and then usually the cure for that is making the game of the year video. It's like, hey, here's all the games I've been excited about. Let's talk about them. Um, but yeah, so it's definitely been up and down. 2023 was really bad for me. I felt like really down in the dumps where it was, post lockdowns, socializing for me and Elaine was still low because, you know, for medical reasons, we have to be still extra careful that I'm not going to go into, but like it's something people who follow us know about. So, you know, mood was pretty low, but this year's, don't want to jinx it, but this year's I've been pretty excited about games. I think it's mostly because I've worked on some very interesting projects. The Arcs video, the This Is Arousal video, the Dune video I'm working out on now, and the King is Dead video. But also this year, I'm just gonna take some time to gab about some really cool games because this year I've played so many games that are so interesting and so different, and like I'm just really jazzed. I'm jazzed to talk about these things because there's so many just exciting games coming out. Have you heard of Eternal Decks? Um,
Yeah, we played it.
oh, we played it together. Ah, yeah. How great is that game?
It was
Like,
great. I'm really excited for it to get the re-release because I will be picking it up for sure.
right? So that was really good. The Old King's Crown, really good.
Yeah,
You know,
great. And that couldn't have happened to a better person. Pablo's delightful.
I've spoken to him for 5 seconds at the convention floor. So I don't really know Pablo, but he seems very nice. But the game is fantastic. And even the like pop culture hits like the Fate of the Fellowship is really exciting.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of like weird like indie gems that are just springing out. Like I've played Winter Rabbit, and that was such a strange, different experience of approaching the idea of like semi cooperative play. I've never played a game before where like everyone just deliberately, strategically vocalized their plans, strategic plans, right? Like this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm planning on doing, and this is why, because if I do this I will then be able to do this in a competitive game, right? Like I've never seen another game do that, and it's just, like there's something in the air in 2025 where games are just so fresh and different and vibrant and exciting. I'm just jazzed to play things right now. So I think I think it helps. I think it helps with the ennui and the burnout or whatever, when you feel like, despite the world being like a pretty horrible place right now, there there is a sense of like just people trying things and doing things, something new, something fresh, something exciting, and oh, that really energizes me. I feel pumped, for the lack of a better word.
That's awesome. I normally ask people what games bring them joy, but now we know. I really can't wait for more Eternal Decks too. I'm very serious about that.
Mm. It's such a fresh design. Like it just it just really kind of like takes this. I don't know. I really like this idea of the cooperative play that emerges from the crew, but to kind of like really gamify it and
Yeah.
mathify it. Like that made it so fun and crunchy and joyous. And of course, like the presentation of that game really helps that kind of like like matte black cloth board with the silver like on it. It looks so good.
Oh yeah. I mean, games are also physical objects, and it helps when they play into that. But it makes me think too. Like people are like, "Oh, well, are we have this is a golden age of board gaming? Have we reached the end of the road?" And having this conversation kind of reminds me, like, no, we'll probably never reach the end of the road. That's like saying that painting ended in the Renaissance, or that there hasn't been a good book since like Dickens or something like that. You know
I
what I mean?
think I think we're just scratching the surface, honestly. I think this is very early days. There's so many things that people haven't tried, and I think part of the problem was that uh, people felt like I think people felt like the hobby was established and that there were a certain way of doing things when it comes to game design specifically. I'm not talking about like publishing or anything like that. I'm talking
Yeah.
about like the codified kind of like sense of the BGG ethos of what a game should be and what it shouldn't be. You know, roll and move is bad, and then like we don't like player elimination, and we don't like king making, and like it's nice to see, like these sorts of ideas being challenged and re-explored, and like because by saying these definitive statements, well, this is bad, and I'm just as guilty of it as anyone else, right? I'm not throwing shade at anyone because raise my hand up. I'm, the first one who would have been like, yes, don't do things this way, do it that way. How we've all been doing them, right? Like, and it finally feels like people are kind of breaking out of that shell and going, no, I'm gonna try something different now. Like I'm gonna explore these things and actually maybe there's something here, and I think we're just like getting to this point, and then from there on, who knows? Like we're at the beginning.
Fantastic. So that means that we're at the end of this episode. We're going for about an hour, but I'm really excited to do this again in a few years and see where we're at. But for people who don't know, where do you like to be found online?
So I like to be found online on a website. Not many people have heard of it. It's called youtube.com. And uh, if you go into that, there'll be like this little search bar at the top. There'll be a lot of other distracting things. Ignore those. Go into that search bar and type in no pun included. That's PUN. And then you'll find my face. And then you'll click on that face and I'll start talking at you. That's where I am.
Perfect. I can be found anywhere online as Beyond Solitaire. Efka, thank you so much for coming on. This is an absolute delight.
Thank you for having me. I had a really nice time chatting to you about things that I don't normally get to chat about. This was really thank you for giving me an opportunity to gab about all these things. I had a really good time.
It was a good gab. All right, everybody out there, thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, ask questions, and most of all, happy gaming.